All right, hello everyone. Today is Saturday, August 21st. I am Unvetica.eth, and this is the Community Call 18. Today I'm joined by my fellow EthStaker moderators. We've got Superfizz here, our in-house Beacon Chain Community Health Coordinator. We've got Patricio of POAP, Buddha of Beacon Chain, our in-house project manager, Gray Wizard.
Hello.
Our Reddit editor-in-chief, Nolan.
Hello.
And we're also joined today by Ben Edgington, the product owner of Teku. And today we have our special guest, Saulius of the Grandine client, which is the newest Beacon Chain client. And I think I can speak comfortably for all of us when I say that we're very excited to kind of get to know you more and more about this client.
Hi.
So to start us off, one of the missions of EthStaker overall is lowering the bar of entry, those interested in sort of this wonderful world of solo staking. And we accomplish this in various ways by the content that we produce and post to our social media outlets. And that kind of comes in various forms, whether that's written guides, video tutorials, these live streams. But the goal is always the same, and that's to instill best practices as it relates to solo staking. So if you listen to, for example, to Superfizz's State of the Stake series, one of the main narratives that we push is client diversity. And I think that's also why I'm so excited for today's call, is because we have yet another client to reinforce the goal of overall client diversity as it relates to Ethereum staking. So before we kind of get into the details of the client itself, Saulius, I kind of want to get to know you a little bit better, your background, and we'll kind of go from there. So if you want to just briefly describe your professional background and where you came from.
Yeah, so I would say I'm in software development for maybe 15 years now. And back then we worked more with web-based systems, especially like larger systems, like backends for social games and so on. So I think this was very different from what we are doing now, in some sense, but also it's in some sense it's a bit similar, as for example some systems were distributed across the globe, which is also common with the blockchains. But overall I would say it was very different. What we did before, as it was more about I would say features. You just try to build features. Comparing to now, what we are building is like a complex algorithms and optimized algorithms, which is usually much harder than just building some feature. So, but that was a past period of us. So, and also from the apart from the software development as a main thing, I'm also an associate professor at Vilnius University, and I'm also doing a PhD currently in the blockchain technologies field. So I would say I have a good mix of like a industry software development and also academy thing. So it's kind of interesting combination, which is not very common in the field. So people either like to build stuff and not too much about the science, and either they are theoretical with theoretical focus. So yeah, that's a very rough background of myself. If you would have more particular questions that we could go deeper.
Yeah, so kind of knowing your background and your exposure to academia, how did you first become interested then in distributed systems?
Oh, this is an interesting question. I think it actually started with these web-based systems, and for example, if you have like a global web system, then you have an interesting latency problem. Basically, if the server is on the other side of the planet, then the request to the other side of the planet is taking just too long for the today's standard. And I think this was one of the first first attempts to do something in a distributed manner, and then you start to think about things like how do you replicate this data between these nodes on the different sides of the planet. So I would say this was very initial thing for myself, but then this is very far from a blockchain. So, but this, in some sense, it relates. So I would say the early point was still with these web systems, but with the blockchains, I think we got a much deeper in that in 2018 when we started to look for funding for a Ethereum 2.0 client, and then after we got the funding, we got really deep into this. So I think it was a very big discovery for us, because not that much people are actually doing a core blockchain development, which is very, very different from a let's say web application or something like that.
Absolutely. So I can definitely see the overlap there. That's sort of a comfortable, I would say, if there's any one transition from a traditional market IT background into this new thing of Web 3.0, I say distributed systems. That's a great short leap, I guess, into that one. So I guess from going from distributed systems into now this world of Ethereum, how did that leap come about, and how did you first get interested in Ethereum?
In Ethereum, this is an interesting question. I actually was mining Ethereum many years ago. I don't know. I think maybe 2015 or 17. I actually don't remember the exact year because it looks like so many years ago from now. Yeah, I think that was the first experience with that, but I don't think that we got that much into the technology. At that time it was very interesting to just mine some coin or so, just to run a node and see how this entire thing worked in general. So I think that was the first thing when we started to look around. But then, as you know, the crypto space just there were periods when it was hot and everyone was interested in that, and there was a colder period when almost no one was interested from the regular folks. So I think that we also initially we had this trend influence, but after a while, as I mentioned, I think. Yeah, we got a bit interested in that. We also did some work with on Ethereum at a smart contract level, basically on an execution layer level, and then I don't know, somehow it felt that we wanted to get deeper, into the core of the technology, into more complex algorithms. And I think the key thing of myself and other teammates is that we are more interested in the algorithms and in the core stuff than, let's say, some application level things. Because application level things are more like for people that like to build features and like to build some end product for end user. So I think this was a very good fit for us to get more into technology, to the core of the technology, and that's how we came to this.
Now that's a pretty fun path too, to be early enough to kind of have hands-on first world experience into mining and see that transition all the way through. That's always a satisfying way to come into the ecosystem. Now let's kind of focus a little bit more on Grandine itself, the client. Actually, even before we get into the technicals, give us a little insight on the name, kind of the origin of that and where it came about.
Grandine is a Lithuanian word that means chain. And there is a coincidence then in Italian it means a hailstorm. So it's funny, but yeah, that's interesting coincidence. So we were looking for a name, and it was very hard to come up with some original English name which should be easy to remember and should fit the topic and so on. And we decided to call a lot of things in Lithuanian names, which is not that, let's say, this name, I think you may think that it's not necessarily Lithuanian or not necessary in some particular foreign language, you know. So we just came with that name, and I think it either will stay like that, or either we will rename when it's open source, you know. So we will see. If it sticks, then it's okay. Otherwise, we will think what to do with that.
So let's get a little bit more into Grandine in terms of give us like the 50,000 foot view at a general sense. How does Grandine fit within the current landscape of beacon chain clients? You know, if we kind of look at Nimbus, for example, they're focusing on low power machines, like getting fast responsive but small footprint. You know, Teku is tackling the enterprise side of things. So what is Grandine kind of looking at and tackling?
Yeah, I think that the key difference from the other clients that we are focusing on a parallelization a lot, and basically a lot of algorithms that we implement, they are highly parallelized. So basically it means that if you have a machine with a lot of cores, it works, Grandine works much faster than other clients. So for example, if you do a full sync, basically from Genesis, applying all the blocks, and if you have a lot of cores on your machine, this full sync may be even up to roughly 10 times faster than other clients. So it's
Wow.
and the benefit basically not the benefit, but the way that why it is faster, it's because the algorithms are parallelized, but you need to have a CPU cores for that. So I would say, yeah, the target focus would be for machines that have a lot of cores, and then we can benefit from that.
Can you tell me what is parallelized and how so? Because my understanding, which is, you know, admittedly low level, you know, it's a blockchain. You got to process one block before you can process the next. How do you parallelize that?
Yeah, so this is, if you just think straight, then yeah, you just end up with the idea that, well, there's block and you need to do everything about that block, and that's all. You know, only that you will be able to do the next block, but that's not the case really. So every step in the block processing, basically, you can. There are algorithms, for instance, rewards calculation, and it's possible just to calculate it in parallel. So basically, for let's say for each validator, you spin a thread, and it calculates the reward in parallel. So small steps can be parallelized, and even block processing. Yeah, even if you look that if you look or if you think completely out of the box, you actually can even think about pre-processing blocks until the point when you need this chain concept. You know, you may for example, it's possible to verify some signatures of some blocks ahead of the current head.
Cool.
Yeah, and then you can parallelize that. So basically, there are a lot of small things that you can parallelize, and when you join that together, you get a really great booster. But that's not very easy to implement, and it needs a bit more of I would say out of the box thinking. You know, just drop that idea that this is a chain and you cannot do anything more than the processing the current slot or block.
So that's similar to what Erigon is doing?
I'm actually not that sure. I think that the key idea of Erigon is that that they have a different storage or concept basically.
Okay.
So the data layers for the execution layer or Ethereum 1, the key problem seems that it's the state. The world state is a big problem, and I would say I'm not sure that Erigon is that much about parallelizing things. I think it's very much the Erigon is very much about doing the accessing and storing the world state in a different way comparing to Go Ethereum.
Okay.
Is that the initial goal when Grandine started in terms of what they wanted to tackle, or is that a result of sort of stepping back and looking at maybe data or research coming in before deciding on a path for Grandine?
Yeah, this is a very good question, and I think only you are the one that that raised this question, and I think it was natural path really. I mean, initially we didn't have this target. We actually have had target to do a really fast implementation, and then we were thinking how we can do that, and it somehow naturally came the solution to parallelize as much as possible, and then basically, as I said, this is at the cost of the CPU cores. Really, if you don't have a lot of CPU cores, then you will not have a huge booster. But if you have, then it's great. And another thing is that you're probably familiar that CPUs are actually getting more and more cores every year, even on let's say on a desktop CPUs. Like we use these AMD CPUs like Ryzen like a 3900X or something like this, like or a newer ones. And these like a basic, I would say, like a huge technology step ahead, but at a still acceptable price. And we believe that in a near future we will have really powerful CPUs, and this power will come from multiple cores, not from a fast single thread, but from a many cores, and that's where we optimize.
Hey, so I was kind of curious. Can you tell us a little bit about the size of your team, the funding that your team receives, and kind of what the long-term goal for Grandine is? Like, how do you see it positioned with the other clients?
Yeah, so there are a lot of questions. So let's start with the team. So in some sense, I would say like 60 or so people contributed to Grandine in some sense, because the classes that I run, the blockchain technology classes that I run at Vilnius University, we try to involve these students in the process. So it was very fun experience to do, because what is great about Ethereum that they have a really great specification. So there is a written specification, and also there is a executable specification, which is very handy when you need to check things. And what we found that if we take a great class of good students, and if we put this specification to them, they may deliver with a lot of work. They may deliver a software which passes the specification, but in no way it's usable in production. So some versions, for example, there was a legacy phase 1, which is not anymore. So we did that with students, and they did. I would say, in terms of passing specification, they did a great job, but I would say almost nothing is actually usable in production because it's just too slow and doesn't follow great industry practices. So yeah, we had a lot of these experiments, and it was very interesting. But the core team, it's around that mainly contributes to this production code, is around 5 people. So it's not that big. But if you look at the other teams, like even for the Go Ethereum, for example, but of course they have a lot of contributors from the community, but the core team is also small. So it was interesting see that it's actually possible to make a client with not a huge team. It's
Sure.
not,
Team size definitely isn't everything. I wanted to point out, it was great to hear you talk about the quality of the spec, because I feel like all of us have a lot of respect for Danny and his development of the ETH2 spec and his refinement of it, because I think that continued refinement is one of the things that sets the Beacon chain apart from other chains who have maybe a much less refined specification to follow.
Yeah. I think that this is a big, like a big asset to the ecosystem, but at the same time, it's important to understand that like executable specs are they are great, and they cover some of the client behavior, but that's very far from the full behavior, especially for something that is not like very unit testable, for example, like networks or network layer or something like that. So this is, I think it's great to have it, but it doesn't mean that if you have it, then all the problems are solved, and you can just quickly make a client, and this is effortless and so on. So this is not but for sure it's a great thing.
And the last thing that I was very curious about is how do you see Grandine positioned with the other 4 Genesis clients? Well, I won't put words in your mouth, but I'm just curious how you see it unfolding in time.
Yeah, as I mentioned, our key focus is this performance on multi-core systems, and I would say probably our well, the success will be defined by the fact is there a need for that, in the market? Is there really need for a client that is that's running faster on a many cores? And if there is such need, then I would say this will be just addition to the all the current set of clients, which I also think has some. Well, they also have some target, like you mentioned, Nimbus is running on a low power devices and so on. So this is there are targets for each client, and we will see which over the longer period gets enough of share. But on the other hand, even if there are clients that doesn't have a large share, they still contribute a lot to the ecosystem, like finding bugs and so on. So there is a value even in these minority clients.
So one of the admittedly, I actually never heard of Grandine until I read the Ben Edgington's newsletter where he sort of debuted it there. That was my first exposure to it. In relation to those next long-term goals for Grandine, what do you have in place or are planning on, rather, in terms of garnering more market share, getting the word out that you exist in terms of adoption?
Yeah, I think the key thing what we need to solve now is basically the obligations to the current investors and further funding. So I think once we solve that and once we are open source, then I believe we will have a much better plan in terms of getting higher market share and so on. So I would say we are still in the building state, and that's probably the reason why we are not marketing currently a lot. So I would say we should get open source before the merge, probably, which most likely will happen sometime in next year. I think once we solve the things that I mentioned, I think we will have a much better marketing plan which should lead to to some market share of the stakers.
Well, that's incredibly exciting to hear. I know part of the current status of Grandine being closed source sort of sits at a stark contrast to Ethereum's overall ethos. So that's good to kind of know that one, you're not only just planning on it, you've got a sort of a roadmap for that to happen, and relative to Ethereum relatively soon. Just kind of expanding on that a little bit more. What is that? Just like a funder motivation why it's currently closed source, and why it's not? Why you would go earlier opening it up?
Yeah, so basically we started to look for funding in 2018, and if you remember, this was pretty hard time for crypto projects, and we explored the different ideas, and we had in mind how much a client should cost, and we were pretty good at estimating that, and we didn't find anyone who would like to fund just an open source client, which I think everyone understands that there is no direct revenue from the open source client. So basically, we were not able to get that funding for. I mean, we were not able to get an investor who would be able just to fund the open source client development. So that was, I think. It probably was a lot of related to the fact that that at that time crypto market was very in not so great shape. Let's say this was 2018, and yeah, the only funding that we got it was there is a combination of a local so-called local EU funding, European funding, and also some private funding, because this European funding doesn't cover all the costs. They just a partial funding basically, and but the key, there are some obligations, for example, that we need to generate some revenue and so on basically, and if we do not meet those obligations, then we need to return this investment, which is not a good thing. And I would say it was a great thing to at least get this funding, because otherwise there would not be Grandine actually. But in the other sense, it was not a best funding, but that was the only one that we managed to get. But it's not the best, because these open source, let's say not open source, but foundations like Ethereum Foundation and so on, they or some other like these, or let's say open fundings or so, they are more interested into open source projects really. So we have this chicken egg problem now. We cannot open source because this is not a guarantee to meet the obligations. And yeah, you know, it's a bit tricky situation, but we are looking for ways to do that. And one of the way that, or let's say direction of the ways that we are thinking about, it's like maybe we can build something on Grandine on top of the client, because as I mentioned, the client itself doesn't generate revenue. This is the key thing. But if we could build something on that, let's say, or some staking service, or some scaling solution or something like that, then maybe this could help to fund and convince investors that everything is going to be great, and then we can open source. So this is, as I mentioned, we would like to open source that today, you know, but we need to meet to meet the obligations for the guys that funded everything. So that's the case.
Absolutely. So on sort of your path of development and getting closer and inching towards that, opening it up to an open source community, what can an end user expect in terms of the type of system this client would be most effective on?
Yeah, so I would say, actually, you can have a taste of the client by the current released binaries, as the binaries are released there, and you can basically just launch some server and run a testnet beacon node or even validator. But I would say, yeah, you can get some taste, and you should you should get idea of overall performance and memory footprint and so on. And so you can check the user interface, which is an interesting feature that we have. There is a screenshot on the GitHub page of the user interface, and so you can download that. And the user interface is mainly oriented for validator rewards inspection. So there is you can check your validators per epoch, how much it got a reward for each epoch. And for myself, it was a very interesting tool as I found a lot of bugs with that. It's actually not that easy to debug a Beacon client or validator client, Beacon node or validator client, because it's unless you have something visual, it's very hard to figure out what is going on. Is everything okay, or is there something wrong? So I would say, yeah, the one thing is a performance, and another thing is at least for us, it looks that we could do a good job also for the user interface for stakers, and the stakers mostly are interested in things like validator rewards.
Are you or anyone else on your team actually staking using Grandine?
Actually, we are more, as we are focused to this performance thing, we were much more interested in running a lot of validators on testnets, comparing to running like a single or so validator on a mainnet, as it's especially today it's an expensive thing to run. So it was very interesting, but we never had this very strong desire to run like a single or a couple of validators on a mainnet, but we had a very strong desire to run a lot of validators, and that's only possible on a testnet, unless you have very deep pockets to do that. Yeah.
So in relation to that project and kind of pushing it forward, how would someone go about getting involved within the community, and if they're interested in contributing to the project?
Yeah, I think what they can do now, it's testing of the client. Basically, you can test, especially if you have a machine that is not Linux, because we all run, the team runs Linux on all machines, and we believe that on Linux it's running not that bad, but for other platforms, we just provide builds, and we do not test that much. So I would say if somebody wants to check their validator performance on Windows, then they can do that, because they do not need to run a validator on Grandine. They can just simply run Grandine Beacon node, launch the user interface, and put their validator public key there, and they will see the performance of their validator. So that would be an easy way to test and give feedback, because we, as we said, we just provide builds and for these other platforms for OS and Windows. And yeah, if you see some issues, then yeah, just please report. Otherwise, if you don't see issues, then you will have an interesting view of your validator performance, which most likely will run on some other client currently.
So I think we're going to switch gears here before we, I see a lot of people chomping at the bit asking about POAP. So before we distribute those, I just want to circle back real quick in relation to the project as a whole and its relationship with its current funding. I guess to give us a little bit more insight, and this will probably even answer questions in terms of like when open source, is what are the exact expectations of your investors in terms of before opening that up to open as an open source platform?
Yeah, so there are, I would say, it's not very straight, not very easy to put it in one sentence, but basically they expect to multiply their investment. So as usually, yeah, and basically we just need to find a way how to do that. And with just open source, as I mentioned, with just open sourcing the client, this is not this will not happen. So we will need to find a way to do that. But I think as the market is good now, it's like everything is growing. I think we'll find a way to do that. And one of the as I said, one of the ways to do that it's probably to build something on top of Grandine, and then yeah, we can open source, and hopefully it will happen as sooner than the merge.
I want to appreciate that answer, because it's very fair for any investor to not know exactly how it's going to unfold, but just sort of fund something with the expectation and hope that it might provide a return. So
exactly.
I have had some personal concerns or questions about the closed source nature, but that context does make more sense, even if it's not like a complex or specific answer. Like, they just need to make money. That's it. Like, it makes sense.
Yeah. But the key thing is, as I mentioned, at that time there was no better available source for us, especially as we didn't make other client before, so it's something like a risky bet for somebody else to invest in that. So this is, I would say, if we didn't do that, then there would not be Grandine, and would that be better? Probably not. So that's the key thing.
Is it possible that the entire project could just be purchased by a vendor who would then take it and do what they wish with it? Is that?
I am not sure. Is there much value in that? If you have just well, you can take just some open source Ethereum client, and you don't need to purchase that. So I'm not sure. I mean, if for these clients, the funding is a tricky thing, and well, I don't know. Maybe sometimes they buy some client, but I'm not sure that there is that much value in doing that.
And I guess I sort of realize the value might actually be developing an algorithm or a parallelization process that isn't obvious in some other way, that then becomes valuable for others, and they might be willing to license that. That seems to make a little more sense to me, at least. And I don't, it's not my nature to get hung up on funding. It's just that I'm trying to wrap my mind around how Grandine is going to unfold in the next year, and to understand that funding is a necessary thing to understand. So I'm just trying to work through it.
Yeah, I totally understand you, because if you just take the current situation, and you just see, oh, there are open source clients and there is some closed source client, then why should I use it? This would be like a general opinion, in my understanding. Probably a lot of people are thinking like that, but as I said, this is just the situation we have. But I agree that in some term we will need to open source if we expect to get a large share, or I would say that's a very low probability. If we build something on top of Grandine, and it's something special that doesn't need to, or actually which is very unlikely, if we build something on top on Grandine, which is likely, but if this somehow demands that the Grandine is closed source, but this is very unlikely, in my opinion. But otherwise, if we want to get this used, we'll need to find a way to make it open source, and then people can check.
It's not my place to speak for all of EthStaker, but as Superfizz, I'm very curious about Grandine, but I also could never encourage its use if the code wasn't available for inspection, and that's the balance that I find myself in.
I would say for the current users, these are very early adopters, which are just interested in like a new client, and they can spin up a new server and basically on a cloud, put the Grandine client and let's say run it on a testnet with testnet validator. You can get all the you can get the taste of the client in a very safe way. Just on a testnet on some server in a cloud, which is not that hard to do for a technically skilled person. But for, let's say, for a regular EthStaker, it's probably not that not that attractive to do this.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, before we open it up for some more general discussion, what I'd like to do is go over today's EthStaker community call, number 18, POAP claim process. Now, historically, what we've done is use the Discord POAP bot and issued a code word. We are no longer doing that. Today, what we're going to do is, and this is a testament really to the POAP platform and their ability to rapidly deploy new solutions. We have a scannable QR code here. So those watching the live stream, if you scan that QR code, regardless if you have the POAP wallet, it will work natively in your phone. It'll direct you to a claim website. You'll simply input your Ethereum wallet address, and that POAP for today's community call will be directly deposited into your Ethereum wallet. Now, a couple things to note here. If for some reason, sometimes depending on our viewership, we get there's some traffic issues. If you get error messages, it's okay. You've got 48 hours to claim this specific POAP. If you scan this code in the future, it will work. Also, if for some reason the QR code is failing to work, look at step 2, where you can go directly to the POAP website, poap.website/communitycall18, where you can go ahead and claim today's POAP. That'll be available in the EthStaker Discord at discord.io/EthStaker, and we'll also post that on the website at ethstaker.cc. Now, before I kind of go through some of the YouTube comments and go through Discord, anything on the minds of our guests today, from either from the EthStaker crew or Ben?
Somebody?
One guy from the Discord chat was asking how you want to pay back to the investors if you received some money from the investors, and like what the incentives are. Like, I mean, you answered it in some way, but just asking. So
yeah, but I can maybe just repeat. So basically, what we see now is probably building something on top of Grandine is maybe the easiest way to show that. Or I don't know, maybe we'll just maybe they will just change their mind in some way, and they will say, okay, this is great to just open source and give away. Unlikely, but that maybe have some chance. But as I mentioned, the key thing is probably build something on top of that.
You mentioned building something as if you have something in mind already.
Mm-hmm.
Might there be associated with MEV?
Well, this is that's a good question. I'm not sure. As this is MEV is well, it's in my opinion it's not so nice thing about the chain, about the blockchain or Ethereum or similar chains that or different other chains that are also experiencing that. And the MEV is a bit well, we need to deal with that somehow, And in my opinion, with this proof of stake protocol, there could be that MEV will be even worse than it is with proof of work now, because basically of the nature of the protocol, where the stakers are participating a lot in the consensus. So it could be. I think the time will show, but I'm not sure I don't think that we are going to do something with MEV, but it's just my current idea. No one knows what will happen.
I think one of our preconceived notions is that everything associated with Ethereum needs to be, GPL, and it needs to be publicly funded. But what we're observing is, in addition to everything that is GPL, in addition to everything that is publicly funded, we have more development going on in the private sector. And that is something we would not have had otherwise. And so it is, regardless of what context it takes, whether it's public or private, it is great to see funding going into development on the Beacon Chain protocol. So from that perspective, we should all welcome and even ask for more of this kind of development. Even though it is private closed source, it's more than we would have had if we didn't have it, if that makes any sense. Like if we only had open source public development, that would be 100%. And what we're experiencing now is 105%. So that is good for our ecosystem.
Yeah, exactly. This is also my idea, and even if these projects are, let's say, closed source now, it doesn't mean that it will not be open source later, So, and even, let's say, even if some of these are closed source now, it doesn't mean that they do not contribute to the ecosystem, like finding bugs or giving some new features or so on. So I think this is a good sign that there is a private money that are coming to that.
Yes.
This is, I would say, this is a great thing, because as you mentioned before, that if you don't have that, it's probably not a better situation.
Yeah. Speaking of which, of finding bugs in the protocol, someone asked on the Reddit, on the YouTube channel, is there a bug reporting process for Grandine?
Yeah, so we report that we are bug bounty program, basically. So we already reported some, and it's an interesting process. It takes a lot of time to report the bug, especially if it's a subtle bug. Then it takes basically a lot of time, and if it gets approved, then there is some financial incentive, as bug bounties usually comes with some return for that. Yeah. So this is the key thing, and this is separate from different from EF funded teams, which just reports bugs as they're funded by EF.
It's so funny. I like, my first step when I observe a bug is, let's go to the code and find out, like, if I can identify where it's occurring so that I know what I'm reporting. And I guess this is just a slightly different process, but it just seems unusual.
Yeah, but if you are talking about a bug bounty program that Ethereum is running, then it's only about the 4 top clients for these open source top clients. So there is not a problem to check the code, but usually it's not necessarily easy to do that, especially for like a networking layer stuff, which is just hard to debug, really.
And is that bounty process outlined on your website, or is that through a third-party service?
Oh, this is sorry, I probably was not clear. I was talking about finding bugs in the top 4 clients, which are open source, and this is official bug bounty program. Now I'm thinking that I maybe confused the question. Maybe the question was about finding bugs in Grandine, or was the question about general finding bugs?
I think the question was about finding bugs in your client.
Okay. So I think if you find the bug somehow in this closed source binary, then you can just open issue on the GitHub. That's what we offer now.
Okay. So we need to wrap up. We have 7 minutes left. I have a question for you. what do you find the most exciting on Ethereum? Do you like NFTs and animated JPEGs, or do you like DeFi, or do you think we are all wasting our time here? Do you use Ethereum on a daily basis? Like, do you put your savings into Compound or Aave?
Well, this is a great question. I think what I found really fascinating is this well, execution layer, which is let's say it's not perfect, but it's really powerful. As creative people made so much interesting things like a DeFi or NFT or something else, you know. So I would say I don't see. I'm not very, or maybe I'm not too, let's say, too fanatic about a particular feature that is built on Ethereum. But for me, it's a much more about the power of the platform. I would say the key feature is this power of the execution layer. So this is what is the most important for myself, and not some single feature that it's there, so some single product.
Thank you.
Just to chime in real quick here before we wrap everything up, going back to the POAP claim, just remember to scan the QR code, and if that is not working for some reason, you can manually claim it at poap.website/communitycall18. Again, that's listed on the EthStaker Discord and will be published on the EthStaker website at ethstaker.cc. Any other closing remarks or questions from the team before we wrap things up here?
Right. From my side, again, I would like to ask again to test our client, to test user interface and give some feedback. You know, so that's the main thing I would like to communicate.
So to wrap up, a couple of things. Our community do like testing things, so hopefully you get some good feedback. And I'm going to take the privilege of using these last minutes to announce that I'm stepping back from my active role on EthStaker. It's been exciting. It's been honoring to help run this community for so long with so many amazing individuals. In POAP, we are building great things, and the challenges ahead for us are so tough that they need my full attention. So sadly, it might be that I am less involved on EthStaker. Hopefully everyone else running it will make even a better job without me. Many times I've been the blocker or the person stopping things from happening. So thank you very much for giving me this opportunity, and see you next time, whenever that is.
Okay, so you have never been a blocker. You have been just the best contributor ever. And so I personally, like, I am blessed and thankful that you spent, holy shit, I'm tearing up. I don't even do that. I'm just really grateful that you've spent your time with us. And I know to people who are viewing or like people who are learning about EthStaker, to me, the first question is, oh, what happened inside their community? Nothing is going wrong. We are continuing forward. We love Patricio. There is no like internal schism. It's just that he has felt like his time needs to be spent nurturing POAP. And it's a bummer for us, but we do know that his best time and effort is spent with POAP. And so he's still going to actually be in our group and we're still going to be with him. He's just going to put more focus onto POAP. So
yeah, and it's to plug. We are hiring for both technical and not technical jobs. So if you love POAP and you want to help us make it better, whether you are a software developer or not, if you want to help us, reach out to us to team at poa.xyz. We may have a nice opportunity for you.
And if you are a deeply plugged in investor / genius and you want to contribute to the EthStaker community, you can reach out to us at twitter.com/EthStaker. I was like, but seriously, thank you, Patricio, for your time. We would not be where we are without all of your help and support.
You're welcome.
Second that.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Patricio, for joining us. Thank you, Saulius, for joining us and expanding on the Grandine client. It's always exciting to have any progress and updates within this ecosystem. So I appreciate your time and information. And Fizz?
Will you close with a plug for Stakehouse? Because this is all about development and Stakehouse is pushing us in that direction. That would be a great closing.
Yeah, I appreciate that because I'm pretty sure I didn't even introduce Colfax during the beginning here. So Colfax, who is a non-minority member of this team, he's definitely doing his fair share of work here, and he is the lead in Stakehouse. And Colfax, why don't you give us just a little elevator pitch on what Stakehouse is?
Yeah, sure. Quickly, so nothing taken personally at all. I know you have so many things on your mind. You do an excellent job. So Stakehouse, what we're focusing on with our EthStaker Stakehouse initiative is essentially gathering developers together to work on projects that developers and non-technical folks like designers and things like that to work on projects that lower the technical bar to staking, as well as generally promote the health of the beacon chain. And so we're talking there about like multi-client GUI installers, ways that we can increase client diversity and things like that. So excited to have follow-up conversation with you, Saulius, about Grandine and maybe how we can work together with you as well on sort of just like making it easier to stake on Ethereum. And we do focus, everything that we do in Stakehouse is open source. So excited to talk to you about your journey to hope eventually hopefully be open source. Just because we want everything to be community driven and open for anybody to use for free and no barriers there. So, but yeah, that's what we're doing with Stakehouse. We have our next community call. We do a bi-weekly community call. It's coming up this Wednesday, which I think is the 25th at 4 p.m. UTC, where we'll be checking in on our multi-client GUI challenge by December 1st and a few other things. So excited for that. And thanks for, giving us the chance to highlight.
Right now, all of the efforts of EthStaker are really into supporting this Stakehouse multi-client GUI initiative, because the goal of EthStaker is to support and promote primarily solo staking for end users. And so we can do that. We spent our first year doing that through training, and we're spending our second year doing that by bringing tools to users. So thanks Colfax, and thanks to everyone on the team. I was glad to participate today. Thank you, Michael, for being an incredible kick-ass host. I'm gonna blow you a big kiss in IM when we're done, because Michael has done so much professional growth and development over the past year that he's just an awesome blah blah blah. Thanks, buddy.
No problem. Anytime. All right, everybody. I appreciate everyone that was able to make the call and those live stream viewers, and we will see you next time. Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for coming, everyone.